The iPhone X set the stage for the future of the iPhone when it was announced back in 2017, and everything Apple released after was built on the framework of this phone. But now we're in 2022, and while the new flagship iPhones still look eerily similar, the landscape of smartphones and what they can do has changed drastically. So in this video, we're going to revisit the legendary iPhone X and discuss whether or not it's worth buying here in 2022. And if you have one now, should you sell it now or just hold on to it until the iPhone 14 comes out? Now, if you were out and about using your iPhone X, maybe at a grocery store, and you told somebody you had the brand new iPhone 14 in your hands, they'd probably believe you because from the front, at first glance, this looks just like the latest and greatest iPhones, and your average consumer is not going to know that we have a smaller notch now, that we have a bigger form factor, and that we have more squared off edges instead of these rounded edges that we had back in 2017 with the iPhone X. So, it has a timeless design, and that's why I said in the beginning that really every iPhone after the iPhone X was kind of built off of this framework. It is a legendary phone for that reason alone. And speaking of those rounded edges, they feel quite nice. Now, I still prefer the squared off edges that we have on the iPhone 12 and 13, but it was nice to go back to those rounded edges in this smaller form factor. Now, the bezels and the notch are more noticeable than on the newer phones, but the funny part about that is that the iPhone X was known for being the first iPhone to not have bezels, essentially. It was the first iPhone to go almost edge to edge and not have those massive bezels on the top and the bottom. But it's pretty funny now, we've come full circle here in 2022, and it looks like it has bigger bezels than the latest and greatest iPhones. But yeah, those rounded edges feel really nice in the hand. It also weighs exactly the same as the iPhone 13, while being a little bit shorter and less wide than that phone. We do also have a glass front and back with stainless steel borders, and I definitely noticed less scratches and less wear overall on the iPhone X for whatever reason than the iPhone XS, iPhone 11. So not too sure why it's not any stronger than those phones that came after it, but you can see here the condition of my iPhone X, it's pretty much perfect condition. Now, granted, I did use a case and a screen protector, but still there are hardly any marks on the front or the back of this iPhone X, which I'm pretty proud of. And fun fact, this was also the first and only modern iPhone to come in just two colors. So it came in space gray and silver. So most people went for the space gray, myself included, because it did show less wear over time, and it also just looked better overall. But if you're an iPhone collector and you want to hold on to an iPhone X for decades, I would look at getting a silver one since it does seem a little bit more rare. There's not as many out there. So yeah, the design was revolutionary for the iPhone, but so was the display. So this is the 5.8-inch Super Retina HD display, and it was the first OLED panel ever put in an iPhone. It has a resolution of 2436 by 1125 at 458 pixels per inch, and an astonishing, at the time, 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio. I remember the first time I unboxed the iPhone X and looked at this display, it was a massive difference from the iPhone 8 and every other iPhone we had before then. So, we do have the same peak brightness as we did on the iPhone 8 at 625. So that is one area of the iPhone X's display that didn't really improve any, but the fact that it was OLED made a big difference, especially for those deep blacks. We also have a pressure sensitive screen, which means that we get 3D touch on the iPhone X. Now, Apple did remove 3D touch in favor of haptic touch, so they wouldn't have to put pressure sensitive screens on every iPhone. But, 3D touch is still king. It still feels so much better than haptic touch. So even here on iOS 14, iOS 15, whatever version you're on, you could still use 3D touch on these pressure sensitive screens. It's not going anywhere just because Apple has haptic touch now. You could still feel the difference. The animations are much quicker, and just being able to feel it with your finger, it's different than haptic touch. And that is one of the top things I enjoyed in my time spent with the iPhone X here in 2022, just because I missed that feature so much. This phone was also Apple's introduction to the world of facial recognition with Face ID. And while Face ID is more convenient than Touch ID in most cases, everyone was split like 50-50 when it was first announced. A lot of people liked that Apple was changing it up and getting more futuristic with their phones, but also a lot of people were really mad and they couldn't imagine using an iPhone without a home button. But as time went on, we got used to it, and nowadays most people don't want a home button unless it's paired with Face ID. But nonetheless, Face ID on the iPhone X works fine here in 2022, but it is a good bit slower than the iPhone 12 and 13 series, and I'm also not able to unlock it from the same amount of angles that I am on those phones. So like if I'm sitting back in my chair and I try to unlock my phone, I have to move up closer to that camera and more in range of the iPhone X's camera than I was used to. So that did take some adjusting, but it works fine. I did also miss the Face ID with a mask feature that is exclusive to the iPhone 12 and 13 series. I know not everybody wears a mask anymore, but I did miss a feature like that when I was out and about using this phone. And part of the reason that Face ID is not quite as snappy is because of the chipset inside. So the iPhone X has Apple's A11 Bionic chip with 3 gigabytes of RAM and a 2-core neural engine. And the reason I mentioned the neural engine is because that's how Face ID operates. It uses machine learning to confirm that your face is in fact your face and that it can unlock the phone when you're in several different positions and angles throughout the day. But now, with newer phones, we have a 16-core neural engine, so 8 times as many cores as the iPhone X, which of course leads to much faster and more accurate Face ID readings. But aside from that, this phone still runs surprisingly well almost 5 years later. I've done normal, day-to-day tasks like web browsing, social media, watching YouTube videos, Twitch streams, and even some light gaming, and everything ran well. Now granted, there were some times when this phone showed its age, like it would stutter at random times, especially when multitasking or launching a more intensive game like COD Mobile, but overall I can't complain too much for a 2017 phone that you can get for pretty cheap these days. And I did also notice some lag in COD Mobile, by the way. It wasn't much, but every once in a while I would get, stutter and just frames dropping mid-game. So this phone also got quite hot while playing that COD Mobile game. So like right here near the camera, right above the Apple logo is where it got really hot when playing a more intensive game like that. And speaking of the camera, we need to talk about this as well, since it was a major shift for the iPhone when this phone was first released. Just like the display. I mean, really a lot of things about this phone are just revolutionary, but it was the first time Apple ever positioned the cameras vertically like this on the back. And still to this day, I think it is the cleanest setup of any iPhone Apple has ever made. I like it so much better than the new phones with their bulky camera array. Like, it doesn't take as good of pictures because of that, but it still looks very clean. Now, don't get me wrong, the quality is not bad on the iPhone X, but when you compare it to the iPhone 11, 12, and 13, you will notice a substantial difference in practically every lighting situation. So we have dual 12 megapixel cameras, a telephoto, and a wide angle lens, but like I always say, it's not about the megapixels on smartphones. It's all about the post-image processing, and the good stuff came after the iPhone X. It came like with the iPhone XS and then the iPhone 11, and I'm mainly talking about Smart HDR and Deep Fusion, both of which make a massive difference in quality. But the camera is perfectly fine for your average shooter. If you're not expecting the best quality possible, you just want something to pass, then you will have zero complaints about the iPhone X. I mean, portrait mode is one thing I'll say is a little bit wonky. The edges are not near as precise as the newer phones, and you can tell it's like a fake bokeh. It's just, not a great version of portrait mode. So that was a bummer. And the same goes for selfies, honestly. In fact, I don't think any iPhone's front-facing camera was good until the iPhone 12. So I may be a harsh critic there, but selfies are also not that great on this phone or even the 2 phones that came after it. Now, video is definitely the bright spot of this camera, and that's because Apple has just been ahead of the competition for years when it comes to video. So it shoots just fine in 4K 60 FPS, and it does also have OIS for stability. Now, low light performance is not great, but in good lighting conditions, the video looks solid. Now, as for the battery life, this was unfortunately the worst part about using this phone here in 2022. I feel like I got better battery life when I was using my iPhone 8 Plus last month for that video. So I only got through about half the day before I got to the 20% battery alert, and I had to charge it up right after that. So it's likely to do with the amount of heat that this phone produces, and also that smaller physical battery inside. It's also a smaller form factor than the iPhone 8 Plus and other phones as well. And even right now, just while shooting this video, I'm not even doing anything really on the phone. I could feel it heating up. So that definitely impacts the battery as well. But if we head into my settings here and go to battery and battery health, you can see I'm at a 93% battery health here on this iPhone X. So not the greatest, but also not the worst. I mean, honestly, if you're looking to buy one used, this would be in the range of possibilities for you to buy. I would not recommend buying anything under 90%, but anything 90% and above, I think is fine to buy on the used market. So not bad, but still I wasn't getting great battery life. But then again, I am also really spoiled by the phones that I use these days. All right, so all in all, the iPhone X was, and really still is, a great phone, but does it make sense to buy in 2022? And if you have one now, should you upgrade now or should you wait for the iPhone 14? So if you take a look at eBay, these are going for around $230 to $300 for one that is in decent condition with 90% battery health or higher. And if you look at Amazon, they're selling them renewed for around $235. Now I prefer eBay, and like I always say, when you are searching eBay, pay attention to the battery health and the storage capacity. So go for 90% or higher on the battery health and go for anything higher than 64 gigabytes for the storage. Now for the iPhone 10, that means you have to go up to 256, but the prices are about the same. So why not go for the max storage when they're about the same on the used market? Now, is the iPhone 10 worth that $230 to $300 here in 2022? No, not at all, in my opinion. And the reason I say that is because the iPhone XS is literally the same price. A much better version of the iPhone 10 is available for the same price on the used market. So that's a no-brainer. If you're in that price range, like $200 to $300, iPhone XS makes way more sense than the iPhone 10. Not to mention, the iPhone 11 is also around that same $300 price tag. So you don't get OLED, but you do get a much more improved camera and much better battery life than the iPhone 10 and XS. So I think there are two significantly better options out there for the same price range than the iPhone 10. So for that reason, no, I don't think you should buy one here in 2022. Now, if you have an iPhone 14, should you sell it now or should you wait for the iPhone 14? And I think you should wait for the iPhone 14. I think the iPhone 10 has already depreciated just about as much as it's going to for the next year or so. So start saving up and sell that iPhone 10 to help fund your iPhone 12, 13, or 14, depending on your budget. I think the iPhone 13, once prices drop, once the iPhone 14 comes out, it's going to be the best buy of the bunch, but we'll revisit that when the time comes. But there you have it. That is my review on the iPhone 10 here in 2022. Let me know what you guys think about this down in the comment section below. Do you agree? Do you disagree with me? Tell me all your thoughts down there in those comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. I do these type of videos all the time here on the channel. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.